In the first 3 lessons in this group, we have introduced the present subjunctive and looked at how it is formed. In this lesson, I want to start looking at when to use the subjunctive. This, of course, is fundamental to your ability to communicate well in Spanish, and so it would be a good idea to go slowly through this lesson and the next 4 so that you get a clear understanding of the various uses of the subjunctive. Usually with my students, when they see the number of uses of the subjunctive, there is a tendency for them to become somewhat overwhelmed. What I normally suggest is that you look through all the lessons so that you get a reasonable understanding of how the subjunctive works, and then pick maybe 2 or 3 uses and practice those, trying to get them into your conversation, and forget about the rest until you're comfortable using them. I will refer to this again and give you an idea of how to go about doing this in lesson 8. So, let's move on to looking at some uses of the subjunctive. Do you remember in lesson 1 we looked at some sentences and we said there was the main clause and then a second or dependent clause? This is what I'm going to refer to now. If the verb in the main clause of a sentence expresses denial, doubt, disbelief or uncertainty, then the verb in the dependent clause will be in the subjunctive. Let's look at a sentence in English. I don't think that you live here. Let's analyse that sentence. I don't think is the main clause, and as you can see it expresses doubt or denial. Therefore, the verb in the dependent clause, which is that you live here, is in the present subjunctive. We have to put the verb you live into the subjunctive. Notice how the verb in the main clause has caused the verb in the second clause to be a subjunctive. Let's translate that sentence into Spanish. I don't think is no creo, and that you live here is que vivas aquí. So the sentence is no creo que vivas aquí. Notice that vivas is the subjunctive of the verb vivir. Other common verbs that express doubt or uncertainty are dudar, to doubt, no estar seguro, to not be sure, and negar, to deny. Note that all these verbs would be in the indicative, followed by the conjunction que, followed by the appropriate verb in the subjunctive. Let's do another example. You doubt that he speaks Spanish. You doubt is dudas, and that he speaks Spanish is que hable español. So the sentence is dudas que hable español. Another group of verbs that cause the dependent clause to be in the subjunctive are the verbs of hoping, wishing and preference. So again, if the verb in the main clause of a sentence expresses hope, a wish or a preference, the verb in the dependent clause will be in the subjunctive. Let's look at some examples. We'll do the sentence, I want you to buy the black car. Here again, I want is the main clause, and you to buy the black car is the dependent clause. So, I want is quiero, and you to buy the black car is que compres el coche negro. So the sentence is, quiero que compres el coche negro. Here's another example. I hope that you have a nice weekend. Again, I hope is the main clause, and that you have a nice weekend is the dependent clause. So, I hope is espero, and that you have a nice weekend is que tengas un buen fin de semana. Notice that in English we could have left out the word that and said, I hope you have a nice weekend, but this omission is impossible in Spanish. Other common verbs that express hope or preference are preferir, to prefer, desear, to wish, and insistir, to insist. Again, note that all these verbs will be in the indicative, followed by the conjunction que, followed by the appropriate verb in the subjunctive. Go to Matthew's classroom and try the exercise that I've done for you. And please come to the forum if you're having any difficulties.